Today I'm bringing you another update of my RaceMax Italia gravel bike. So there are some fairly big changes that I've done this time, and yeah, both in terms of the group set, as you can see, and the front end. So let's just start with my main issue with this bike that I've been struggling with, and that was the position and the handling. Now, this bike has a fairly relaxed geometry in this size 54, and because of that I kind of always felt that there's, for me and my position, that there's not enough weight on the front end. So I tried to go around the problem, and I've experimented with different handlebar and stem setups. So one configuration that I've had was the standard 3T carbon stem with the Aerocoach Onyx handlebar, but that was a bit too long in the reach and a bit too tall in stack, so didn't really work that well. I mean, it was fast and aero, but the handling just, I don't know, I never had that sure-footed kind of feeling in the corners. So I went back to the drawing board, and instead of that configuration, I have dreamed up a different variation on that. So I wanted to go a bit lower and a bit closer. So that's where this nice little unit comes in. This is an extra light Cyber SL stem, or I don't know, some kind of weird name like that. The main point of this is usually not many standard separate stems, I would say, have the ability to take the brake hoses from a D-shaped steer fork and spit them out in the front to the back side of the handlebar. But this one, since it's a super lightweight design, it's not really done by intention, but due to the fact that there's so much material removed, you can do that. And plenty of custom bike builds do that, as I have seen with different bike builds, the S-Works Crux with integrated cable routing, for example. So that's where I got inspired to use this stem. And on the surface level, this has all performed really well because it brought down the front end by a big margin. I have also, because of this, been able to remove the standard plastic spacers from underneath the stem, so this sat right on top of the bearing, and it also was a pretty nice fit with the Aerocoach Onyx bar. And yeah, as I started riding it, the first few rides were okay, and then problems started to appear with this. The reason why this is so lightweight partly is due to the fact because it uses really just a minimal amount of material and super high tolerances, and the stem bolts are all made out of titanium and are just M4s, so really tiny screws. And the tightening torques here are really small and really minimal, 2 Newton meters at the clamps. And with that handlebar, the tolerancing, yeah, this is usually a problem with bike parts due to tolerance stacking. Even with the proper torque and proper application of friction paste, there was slippage in the bar clamp. So as soon as I hit a bump, which you do on gravel, for road it might have been fine, but I started to get handlebar slip after a few rides. This is probably also due to the fact that the Aerocoach bar has quite a long reach, so you got a increased leverage compared to the stem clamp. And because of the D-shaped section and the very minimalist nature of the steer clamp, it was also possible, if you apply enough force, to twist the bar sideways. So really not a safe combination with all of these parts in the equation. So in the end, I just went back, and I really liked that setup, how that started to get where I wanted to, because it had both the aerodynamics that I wanted from the narrow bar and the low position, and also proper weight distribution. So I was a bit frustrated by this, and then I just went back to the standard handlebar and stem that comes with the bike. And honestly, I didn't expect it to be any good, because it's a really traditional setup that I haven't ridden for the past, I don't know, it has to be at least 5 years. And surprise, surprise, it did work, and it does work. And I've been riding the bike like this ever since. And it probably has most to do with the fact that the frame geometry itself and the stiffness and the layup are all optimized around this standard position. So with this standard 42 centimeter bar and the 90 mil stem, the bike turns very well, very confident handling, and just general good ride feel, much better than what I had before. So it kind of makes sense based on what I just said. But one downside here is that, you know, it's quite a relaxed position still. It's not very aerodynamic. But since this year I'm not really racing due to health issues, which I might have talked about in previous episodes, I'm not sure. But anyway, just for general riding, it is awesome. And particularly for technical stuff and descents and corners, this configuration is really nice. Regarding the speed, I haven't done comparative aero testing just yet. What I can see from just anecdotal evidence from my rides, with power in relation to my speed, on the road it is a bit slower than, you know, a full-on race setup like I had before. On the other hand, on rough terrain, I think the rolling has improved slightly due to the fact that there's more weight on the back of the bike, and the front end is not bogged down in the dust and in the deep loose stuff that you get sometimes, particularly in these summery super dry conditions. So I'm going to experiment this with this a bit more, but yeah, so far so good. It might even stay like this, maybe with just going a bit narrow with the handlebar and a bit longer in the stem, but keeping it standard and the standard part. So yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised by this. Didn't expect this change to work at all, to be honest, but it does. So that's the position part of the thing. I've also said in the previous update that I was not completely sold on the new GRX Di2 system. So because I had a big pre-order from Sram, I had a few group sets in stock, and I decided to go with the red E1 variant. Unfortunately, this bike is not yet a SRAM UDH compatible, so I had to stick with the standard 12-speed setup. However, in my case, you know, I still have the classified rear hub, so that gives me plenty of gear range. Now, the biggest issue that I had with GRX was the lever shape, the rubber on the hoods, and just the overall kind of bit of a wooden feel on the brakes. And the new red levers and brakes are a massive improvement over that. So that was kind of a pleasant surprise also. We've got basically just single finger modulation and very, really strong brakes. And yeah, very good leverage in the drops. So yeah, compared to the Shimano system, the brakes are really, really amazing. So that's and I'm using the same rotor, so it's not down to that, but it's just an excellent combination that I really, really like. Again, off-road, you really want that confidence in your brakes, particularly in the technical stuff. So that definitely helps. One thing that I wasn't 100% happy with was the position of the levers themselves. So of course you can adjust the reach of them, and as you can see, I've adjusted them quite close to the bar because of the shape of this bar. I need that because my fingers are not extremely long. So this is now excellent as for braking. A bit of a problem arises with the shift paddle location. So because of the backward kink in the brake lever, when I adjust the brake feel to be just right, the shift button kind of is now suddenly too far back, so I have to kind of weirdly actuate it with my ring finger and my pinky, so that's not what I would like, to be honest. And also the throw and the click of the shift button has kind of it's just a long throw of the button itself, you know. So if you watch closely now, then I have to push it all the way up to here when the click is engaged. So if I were to modify this to my own, I would definitely keep it just, you know, a much shorter click. So the upside of that is that you can't really misshift with this system. And the downside, of course, is that you have to reach quite far in just to activate the shift. So coming from Shimano, that was a bit strange, to be honest. But maybe if I were to opt for a different handlebar with a different kind of drop shape, I could move the levers further out and have that back in the correct position. But yeah, with this I'm not 100% convinced. One thing though that I really like about the latest changes that I've made is I've placed the classified shift button all the way to the lever hood, so it kind of even is covered by the rubber hood itself, and this way I can actuate it really easily, can't actuate it accidentally, which is also a big plus, and it just looks rather neat because it's fully hidden. You can't even tell that there's an extra shift button there, so that's kind of nice also. Now SRAM also has these satellite shifters up here in the hoods on the side of them, and actually they're really quite nice. I think because with Shimano ones you get them on the top, and that's not very convenient to access while riding, at least not for shifting, but these perfectly fine, so big thumbs up for those as well. As for the general shift performance with the new SRAM, I can't really fault it, to be honest. It's still perhaps around 10% slower than Shimano, but it's perfectly fine. You get nice, crisp, controlled shifts in both directions. And yeah, the good thing is that the classified cassette is actually designed to work with a flat top chain. So at least now it's a holistic system, because previously I had the Shimano group set on there with the SRAM chain, and you know, I like to have matching things on the bike, so this was just a bit of an eyesore for me. But that is now all solved and it works perfectly, and I just really like, visually speaking, how the polished calipers come together with the bright green on the frame, and also my Hope silver brake rotors. So I think that visually the bike is really nicely matched now, and based on the comments I got on it on Instagram, I think most of you agree as well. So I'm happy with that, because I like to have a good looking bike. It's just more pleasant to ride that way. So yeah, that's pretty much it regarding group set, shifting, braking. We've talked all about that. Now let's have a bit of a talk about the cranks. So previously I've told you about the lengths I had to go to get a 46 tooth chainring on this bike, and that meant offsetting the crank fully into the drive side direction, which meant that I had to use a longer spindle on the non-drive side pedal. It was a bit of an awkward mishmash again. So then I looked into the rotor parts a bit more, and I found that there's an offset axle in existence with a wide Q factor, and I've ordered that and I have been using that for the past few weeks also. And with this I can have the cranks perfectly centered on the bike while still having enough clearance for the 46 tooth chainring. except I just don't have the Power to Max on there right now because I had to use it for something else, but a new one is coming really soon. But anyway, with this one and the flat ring, I'm able to use a 46, which is a godsend. If I imagine that I had to use the standard prescribed 40 or 42, wow, it's just not for me. Even like this with the classified setup, I would like to go up to the 50 at least for more drivetrain efficiency because of the 46 and the 1134 tooth cassette and the reduction gear ratio. I don't really have any place in the surrounding area where I could use that low of a gear. It's really quite rare. And also due to the fact that the whole drivetrain is shifted a bit outwards or outboards, then the chain angle on the larger sprocket is quite severe, so maybe not optimal from a friction standpoint. But apart from that one gear combination, that's always the problematic one with one by, is just a really, really nice system. The reason I said I would like a 48 or a 50 tooth maybe is the fact that, I said already that I don't really have a place where I could use the lowest gears, so those are kind of too low. On the other hand, I have a descent where I just constantly hit the 4611, and the limit of that, it's around 52, 55 km per hour with reasonable cadence. So I would like to bump that up a bit more to at least 60. Would be nice, particularly in race scenarios, but yeah, maybe I can find a way to do that. I think with the offset axle now, we do have a bit more space to go to with a 48 maybe. Ideally, if the cassette started from a 10 and went up to a 34, that would solve the issues because that would produce a much taller gear than what we have now. Granted, it's not the 10 tooth cog is obviously not the most efficient, but for descending where you don't need to apply a lot of power anyway, it's better to have that rather than to be spun out. So those are my comments regarding the gearing and the gear ratios. As you can see, I've also installed a wolf tooth chain catcher or chain guide up front. This was not really a necessity because I didn't experience any chain drops with the setup in its original format. I just thought that, if you remove the front neck hanger completely, there's no cover to neatly get rid of it. So I just thought instead of that and having this ugly blank space on the frame, I would just cover it up with something useful. And it's really quite light, quite sleek, and it's better to have a peace in mind. So that's about the chain catcher on the front. Yeah, due to the crank spindle change, my pedal spindles are now symmetrical and the narrower version. So still my Q factor has grown by 5 millimeters, but it's better than it has been before because that was around 9 or 10 millimeters, I think, which is not really my preference. I like to have my feet nice and close to the bike because I have narrow hips and frankly I just want to be aero. So that's a good way to achieve that. Q factor has a big influence on aerodynamics, as you might know. So yeah, all of these kind of fine-tuning in progress at the moment. I'm perfectly happy with the wheels and the tires, so I don't think I'm going to be making any changes there soon. So yeah, probably the things that are left to be optimized for next season, now it seems, with not much racing to do anymore this year, is the bar and stem setup and the gearing, to maybe see if I can go up to a bigger front ring, and that would be spot on because I would have nice efficiency with the bigger chainring, good spread of gears, and also a top gear that's tall enough, and a low gear that's not too low. to my use cases. So yeah, that's about it for now, I think. So plenty of changes on this bike, a few more still to come, and yeah, hoping to really pull it together by the beginning of next season. I think the first races will come around March or April on gravel, so by that time I want to have everything fully dialed in, but we are getting there. I'm making good progress with this, so if you want to see the end of it and how it shapes up in the future, then of course stay tuned to future updates by subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.